So I'm doing a review here for this film, Mrs. Claus, which is a fairly recent film. I think it's only been out for about 6 to 8 weeks as I record the video, as far as I know. And it's written and directed by Troy Escamila, hopefully I'm pronouncing that name correctly, who formerly did Party Night. The story of this one is that it starts out by following a young woman who is trying to join a sorority, and she's put through a humiliating and demeaning hazing process in order to join. She does successfully join, however, but then sometime later at a Christmas party, she is reminded of the humiliation that she went through in the form of a taunting Christmas gift given to her publicly by the hazing ringleader. This causes her to snap, and she later goes on to kill the girl who gave her the gift before committing suicide herself. We then jump forward 10 years later, and it's Christmas time once more, and the sister of this murdered girl is now living in the same sorority house. This girl called Danny receives a kind of weird poem from someone claiming to be a Mrs. Claus, who says that there will be bloodshed at the house that Christmas in a similar fashion to what we saw 10 years prior. Danny decides to stay at the house over Christmas, however, as her friend is hosting a party for those that are not going away for the holiday. So in a show of support to her friend, she decides to stay, which proves to be a mistake. As you can guess, this Mrs. Claus ends up crashing the party and picking off the guests one by one in an attempt to engineer a showdown with Danny. I'm going to go into the good points now, what I liked about the film. I thought it was a decent mask and outfit combination. It was like a traditional Santa style suit with the red kind of velvet and the white trim, similar to what you see on the front cover here. The mask was kind of like a grey old lady face. It was kind of not quite the same as what you see on the front cover here, because I don't believe it had the red glowing eyes, and the mouth was slightly different, but it was kind of just like a grey old hag lady kind of face. But it was quite creepy and I quite liked it. Perhaps not to everyone's taste though, but for me it was a positive. It was a little bit random that Mrs. Claus was the name of the killer, and indeed was the inspiration for the outfit, because that had absolutely nothing to do with the initial hazing and the murder-suicide at the start, but I guess it does tie in with the Christmas theme, so I can't complain. The next good point is that there are lots of good kills in this. The practical effects are strong. There's a lot of blood, a lot of gore, so they do a good job there. They certainly don't skimp on the blood. There's quite a variety in the choice of weapons used as well, so it's all positive for the deaths. For a low-budget production, the special effects that go with the kills are very good, so it's certainly probably the highlight of the entire film, and indeed its strongest aspect. Next positive thing is that the ending is pretty decent. It kind of goes down a very predictable route, but then at the very end, although you perhaps won't be surprised at who the killer is, there are a couple of twists after that kind of do turn things on their head a little bit and kind of catch you by surprise. So it does end on quite a strong note. Some other positive things that I liked were the use of the poetry that I mentioned previously. This is used on a couple of occasions throughout the film, 2 or 3 instances. And though it's not the best poetry, it's pretty sloppy. It does kind of still throw up memories of films like My Bloody Valentine and Valentine. And I do like the poetry aspect that we saw in those films, even though it's not as strong here. It's still something that I quite enjoyed. There's also an interesting way of displaying text messages in this film, when they kind of, instead of us seeing through the character's eyes as we normally do when things like this happen, here they kind of use a different technique where they kind of have speech bubbles pop up with the text in there, kind of like the speech bubbles that you might see in say a comic strip. So that was quite unique, and I quite like that. Going on to the bad points now. The main thing that stood out for me was the script wasn't as strong as it could have been. It was quite weak in certain areas. In particular, there was a part of the film where 2 of the characters left the main group during the party to kind of go and get high by themselves in this little shed, and the conversation that they were having while they were high was really bad, to the point of being quite embarrassing and cringy. I guess they obviously were high, so we can't expect intelligent conversation, so maybe that could be used to justify it, but it was still really bad and really lame. But there were a couple of other weak parts to the script as well. One in particular that stood out for me was that I didn't think at the beginning of the film that the taunting gift was quite strong enough to kind of push this girl over the edge in the way that it did. It was bad, but it wasn't that bad, and I was kind of surprised that was the thing that kind of pushed her over the edge and kind of caused her to snap. I think they could have come up with something a bit better there, so that was maybe slightly weak writing in that area. And like I mentioned before, I did like the poetry, it wasn't very good, it was very sloppy and kind of didn't seem like much effort had gone into it, so that could have been tightened up as well. The next bad thing that I can mention is that the final girl, Danny, is not that likeable. She's a bit lackluster and not very memorable. And for me, a key ingredient in a successful slasher is a very likeable kind of final girl or boy. We don't really get that here. She's not bad, she doesn't do a bad job, but she's just a bit, a bit nondescript, doesn't really stand out that much and come across as someone that you can really root for. There are some more minor characters, the brother and sister combination, I think they're called Kayla and Kyle, who are much more likeable in smaller roles. And one of the sorority sisters called Monica, who's also probably more likeable than Danny is herself, so is lacking a kind of central main character that we can really get behind and pull for. But apart from that, I can't really pick out any bad points. It was, so there's not that many bad things to say about this one, so that's good. So just give you my conclusion then, I did like the film. It was very predictable, kind of went down a very kind of by the numbers route. It's quite stuck to the formula, but despite that, despite not being very ambitious plot-wise, it did kind of deliver a strong ending with a nice little twist, so that had that going for it. And the special effects were very good concerning the blood and the gore, so certainly hit the mark there. It could have done with a tightened up script and a more likeable final girl, like I said, but aside from that, I definitely recommend it. I did enjoy it, and for a low budget production, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, which is quite high for a low budget film. So 7 out of 10, I'd recommend it. A nice Christmas film to check out. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.